Part 119. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1190. Latest website. The other party laughed when he heard this, and happily stamped the regulations on a document. As for whether this matter would cause him to lose his position, he didn't care. With the current situation in Xiangjiang, who can care about him? Such a little person. It's not bad that he lost his position. He used the money to go out to eat, drink and have fun for a year, and he can continue to work when he comes back. At 3:30 in the middle of the night, a black car pulled Lu Feng to the beach. When the car arrived, the door opened, and the man sitting next to Lu Feng whispered, "Get out of the car." Lu Feng got out of the car door closed immediately, and then the car sped away. There was darkness all around, and only a dim crescent moon could be seen high in the sky. The sea water slapped the sand and made a splashing sound. Apart from these, there was no other sound. The sea breeze blew, and Lu Feng felt a bit cold. He looked around and saw that there was no one around. He couldn't figure out what these people meant by leaving him on the beach. Just as he was about to find a roadside taxi to go back, a beam of light shone on the sea, and then a speedboat drove over. Su Yorong waved to Lu Feng and shouted, "Come up quickly." Lu Feng walked toward the depths of the sea, got on the motorboat, and asked Su Yorong, "What are you doing at night? You have to go back to the mainland. It's not safe here. I helped you find a smuggler overnight. Zhang Xiaoyan will pick you up in half an hour on your motorboat." Su Yorong handed over a coat. He came over and said, "I didn't expect that there would be such a day. It's still speedboats and smuggling. It's a pity that there is no Coast Guard this time. Let's not talk about this. If you can't find a way to compete with the Schroeder Group, next July it is not recommended that you come to Xiangjiang again before the first day of the month." Lu Feng sat in his seat and looked up at the gloomy sky. He was filled with emotion and asked the driver in front of him, "Is there any cigarette?" "Yes, 20 for one." Lu Feng fumbled around in his pocket for a long time, with a look of embarrassment on his face. Su Yorong took out half a pack of ladies' cigarettes from his pocket and put it in Lu Feng's hand. She got off the boat and walked toward the shore. The speedboat headed quickly into the darkness, the oncoming sea breeze whistling in the ears. About 40 minutes later, the speedboat entered a shallow bay. The driver took out a flashlight and flashed it around. After a while, a motorboat came speeding up. It was the same motorboat that was given as a gift when he bought the villa. Zhang Xiaoyan put her wrapped tightly. Lu Feng carefully stepped on the edge of the speedboat and stepped on the motorboat. Then he walked all the way back and the motorboat drove directly to the deep water dugout in front of his house. After walking ashore for 2 minutes, he was in front of his house. Lu Feng felt that his legs were extremely cold. Fortunately, the temperature was not too low. He took off his shoes and poured water. Lu Feng hesitated for a moment and threw the shoes in angrily. "Trash can." "Thank you for your hard work," Lu Feng said to Zhang Xiaoyan. "Go back to bed. It's embarrassing enough to do this so late at night." Zhang Xiaoyan entered the house, took off her coat, tidied up briefly and went upstairs to sleep. Lu Feng sat in the living room and couldn't sleep at all. He lit a cigarette and smoked silently. He was in prison more than an hour ago, but now he was sitting in the living room. Obviously, John no longer cares about Lu Feng. With Lu Feng's shareholding in the board of directors, even if he does not attend the board meeting in half a year, the equity sale agreement can still be passed. They no longer care about whether this company has a future, but they care more about this. Can a business be controlled by oneself? Lu Feng smoked one cigarette after another. Now that the situation has come to this, he must find a way to deal with it, otherwise he will be just a piece of meat lying on the display board. As time ticked by, Lu Feng raised his head and took a look. He silently calculated the time difference in his mind and took out his cell phone to call John. He already had an idea in his mind. The phone rang for a while before the assistant picked it up. John was stunned when he heard it was Lu Feng's call, and then he picked it up randomly. "Let me tell you something, I just came out of the police station in Xiangjiang, and they wanted to arrest me because they received an order to execute a British arrest warrant," Lu Feng said towards the phone. "It seems that you are safe now. As long as you are safe, I can't help you much in this regard. After all, I am just an employee of the Schroeder Group. However, I will come into contact with some people at some dinner parties. If I have a chance, I can tell you something," John said very politely. "No, I think I can solve this problem myself. I called you. I just suddenly thought of a creative way. Recently, I suddenly feel that the country is very difficult. If some people continue to press harder, then I don't mind. I will sell my equity to a state-owned enterprise for $1. Lu Feng was afraid that he didn't know what this meant, so he helped explain. Currently, there are not many legal restrictions on private enterprises in the mainland. Among them, mergers and acquisitions by overseas enterprises, except for core business enterprises, are all allowed. However, state-owned enterprises have relatively strict control in this area, and any transaction needs to be applied for and approved before it can be traded. If it is a central enterprise, it will be even more troublesome because it needs to be checked to see if it involves the loss of state-owned assets." There was no talking on the other end of the phone, just silence. Lu Feng took 2 puffs of cigarette, and then said, "I believe that this equity agreement should be easily reached. By the way, you know Chang Hong, right? It is a good opponent, it also conforms to the status of a state-owned enterprise, and the equity is in his hands. It will be more troublesome. Mr. Lu, I think there may be a misunderstanding." "Don't get excited," John spoke and said with a smile, "the equity you hold now is worth a lot of money. It would be a huge loss to sell it at such a low price. What's more, besides, this matter has to be approved by the board of directors, so you should calm down first and have a good sleep." "Okay, I'll go to Xiangjiang in a few days. Some things have to be dealt with after all." After Lu Feng said this, he hung up the phone. It was already past 4 o'clock in the morning, and the summer nights were very short. At this moment, there was a touch of green outside. Lu Feng put his cigarette in the ashtray and went upstairs to rest. At noon the next day, Duo stood by the bed and pushed Lu Feng with his hands, muttering, "Dad, wake up, I'm hungry. Go to your mother when you're hungry. Dad slept late last night. Let's sleep a little longer." Lu Feng turned over and continued to sleep. "My mother went to work, so she gave her the money. We couldn't get a taxi near our house, and my aunt went back to her hometown." Duo still pushed Lu Feng with his hands. Lu Feng couldn't stand the torture anymore, so he sat up and rubbed his face with his hands, and said angrily, "Why don't you go to school?" "I'm on summer vacation," Duo replied. After a long time, Lu Feng finally woke up. He changed his clothes and drove out to take her to dinner. In the private room of the hotel, Lu Feng looked at Duo, who was already somewhat slim, and asked, "Do you have a lot of homework during the summer vacation?" "Without summer vacation homework, I will be in the first year of junior high school at the beginning of school," Duo said with a grin. "Are you already in the first grade of junior high school?" Lu Feng couldn't believe it. He looked like a big girl. After saying that, he stared at her and assessed her carefully. He was almost 1.5 meters tall now. He had a ponytail, his crescent-shaped eyes when he smiled, and his skin was much fairer. You could clearly tell how he looked. Not ugly, but he doesn't look like either Lu Feng or Zhang Xiaoyan. "Have you decided which junior high school you will go to?" "My mother said to go to Shenzhen Middle School," Duo replied. "Is this school good?" Lu Feng wondered. "I don't know, it should be okay. My mother said she made a few calls and got in based on your name," Duo said truthfully. "Do you want to go to Xiangjiang?" Lu Feng asked. Duo doesn't know how to answer. She is no longer a child and understands what is going on in her family. The separation of her father and mother may be unstoppable. Lu Feng originally wanted to ask a question, but when he thought of putting such a difficult question in front of a child, it was a bit cruel. He sighed for a long time and started to teach him again with a fatherly touch. He should study hard when he goes to junior high school, don't follow the same rules as elementary school. It seems like the whole thing is just playing around. I have something to do later. You can go back by yourself, or go and play with your classmates. Lu Feng dug into several pockets, found out more than 200 change and handed it to her and said, "Remember to take a taxi home." "I know, thank you, Dad." Duo took the money with a smile on his face. After dinner, Lu Feng paid the bill, drove straight to the company, and went upstairs. Lu Feng called Zhu Lidong directly to the office. "Mr. Lu, when did you come back?" Zhu Lidong looked at Lu Feng in front of him and was a little surprised. He didn't hear that the matter in Xiangjiang was completed. "Last night, without mentioning this matter, I want to ask you something." "Who is the person in charge of Changhong now?" Lu Feng asked. "My name is Ni Runfen now. What's wrong?" "Can you contact him?" "Please contact him for me and tell him that I plan to sell him the equity of Jiafeng Group for 1 yuan," Lu Feng said without any hesitation. "What?" Zhu Lidong shouted. He was shocked and didn't know what happened. Is Lu Feng crazy? "Didn't you hear clearly?" Lu Feng looked at him and wondered. "No." "Why is this?" Zhu Lidong sat down and asked, "What happened?" Lu Feng briefly said a few words about the matter, which was not very clear, but Zhu Lidong also guessed closely. It was obvious that everyone was impatient to play with each other and wanted to turn the table over and stop playing. "This is too vicious." Zhu Lidong frowned and said, "How about we shrink back?" "It can't be shrunk. Now there is only one trick left, threat. Only those who truly dare to fight to the death can live towards death. Mr. Zhu, I trust you very much. I can let you hold my equity on your behalf. If anything happens to me, you can sign immediately and sell the equity held on behalf of Changhong to Changhong." Lu Feng stared at Zhu Lidong and said. Zhu Lidong sat there silently. After fighting to this extent, there was really no way out. As long as there was some way, Lu Feng would not come up with such a non-solution. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1191. Latest website. The office seemed a bit dull. Lu Feng and Zhu Lidong smoked in silence for a long time. Lu Feng said, "Go and contact me and don't make this matter public, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble." "Okay," Zhu Lidong nodded in agreement. In John's office at Schroeder Group, several senior executives were sitting across from each other. One of them, a white man in his 50s, said, "We just got the news that Wall Street may be taking action against Thailand." "Do it?" John was startled and asked hurriedly, "What level?" "Next Vietnam." "No, it's about finance." "This matter has something to do with Lu Feng," the other party said briefly, and John was secretly relieved. The current world situation is too tense, like a pile of dry weeds. If there is a little spark, a war will break out, especially in Asia. But they can still accept the financial confrontation. This Lu Feng has caused too many things, and now he has started to make threats. "I never thought that such a fragile guy could do so many things," John said about Lu Feng's plan to sell his shares. Read it again. At the beginning, John thought that taking control of the Jiafeng Group was not just a matter of holding hands. However, as things have developed today, Lu Feng's tenacity has far exceeded their expectations. "Do you think he dares to sell it? In other words, is he willing to sell it?" John looked at several people. "This is nothing more than a bet. If Lu Feng dares to sell to a state-owned enterprise, the money he will get will be very small. If he negotiates with them easily, he can still get a lot of money and leave with dignity. If you want me to see it, you might as well give it a try. Domestically, senior executives of Changhong Group were shocked when they received Zhu Lidong's call. At first they thought it was a harassing call from a boring person, but it was not until Zhu Lidong flew to Sichuan in person to tell them about it that they confirmed it was true. In the reception room of Changhong headquarters, 7 or 8 senior executives were sitting on the sofa. Mr. Ni was smoking a cigarette and looked at Zhu Lidong, and asked cautiously, "Isn't GFN developing well? What happened?" "Nothing happened. The market is currently stable. There will be new breakthroughs in the semiconductor field this year. It is expected that the headquarters building will be opened in September," Zhu Lidong replied. "Is there something wrong with the billions of dollars of overseas financing?" another person asked. "No, and the contract has been completed a long time ago, otherwise GFN would not have developed so fast." Zhu Lidong could sense their doubts and said, "There is nothing wrong with the company, and the sale is also Mr. Lu's personal equity, mainly because some internal situations." The man at the end said subconsciously, "I have long heard that they are fighting fiercely among themselves." Several people looked at the man one after another. The man immediately understood that he had told the truth and coughed twice to cover up his embarrassment. GFN's 10% equity was worth a lot of money. Let's not talk about whether the $1 acquisition was true or false. Changhong was really, if you want to invest in GFN, then it will definitely go sideways in the home appliance industry. Mr. Ni smoked his cigarette in silence. After thinking for a moment, he almost understood it in his heart. There was no way the pie would be lost in the world. Why was he looking for Changhong instead of other companies? There was only one possibility. He was interested in Changhong's status as a military-industrial company. In any case, the two companies are old friends. If my friend has something to do, he must help. Mr. Ni threw the cigarette butt in the ashtray and said to Zhu Lidong, "Well, we can sign an agreement, however, this contract is not enforceable. It will pay us 2 million every month. If anything happens, we can cooperate with each other." Zhu Lidong was happy when he heard this, and he still enjoyed chatting with smart people. The two companies were on the same level, and Zhu Lidong really couldn't say anything about wanting to borrow his identity as a military-industrial company. Now everyone understands what each other means. The only drawback is that 2 million is too much. You are a sensible person, but 2 million a month is a bit too expensive, isn't it? Zhu Lidong smiled awkwardly and said, "Because the equity is Mr. Lu's personal equity, this money cannot be paid by the company. This money for Mr. Lu, it's too high. Sign a contract with each other, 200 a month?" Everyone present felt that it was too expensive, and it was ridiculously expensive. Let alone 1 month, even if it averaged over a year, it would cost more than hundreds of thousands, and no one could afford it. Someone next to him thought this business was good and wanted to give some advice. Mr. Ni hurriedly waved his hand to stop him and said, "Mr. Zhu, you are in the market. You should understand a truth. There are two precious things in this world. One is less and the other is wealth. It's urgent, it's small, and it's urgent, but tons of gold can't buy it." At this point, Zhu Lidong knew in his heart that he had already fallen into a passive position by coming to look for him in a hurry, and it was not a loss for him to receive this blow. The two sides changed the topic, drank tea for a long time, and had lunch together, but they still refused to let go, so Zhu Lidong had no choice but to agree. In the past few days, the lawyers of both parties were contacted to work out an agreement as soon as possible. In mid-July 1996, Tiger Fund and Quantum Fund signed a loan agreement with the Federal Reserve. Using the two funds' hundreds of billions of dollars in capital as a base, they leveraged hundreds of billions of dollars, and then began to sign loans internationally. Thai baht, US dollars borrowed as collateral. In late July, in the scorching summer, a piece of news spread like wildfire. Lu Feng, the founder of GFN Group, signed an agreement with Changhong Group. Both parties intended to sell 10% of Jiafeng's equity for 1 yuan. Domestic business circles were shocked when they heard the news. They didn't know what happened. Privately, some people rumored that Jiafeng was too big and had foreign capital behind it, so the country put pressure on Jiafeng to nationalize it. Various rumors in the business world have also spread to the top management. Lu Feng received several calls, hoping that he would stand up and explain that the current domestic economic situation is relatively fragile and not to cause capital panic to avoid problems such as the flight of foreign capital. Lu Feng took space in many newspapers and media and explained in a few simple sentences, extraordinary times require extraordinary perseverance to achieve extraordinary results. If you don't succeed, you would rather stay with your family than with foreign invaders. In just 10 days, there were constant calls from all kinds of people, whether they were former opponents or friends, wanting to know what happened. Lu Feng didn't say anything, he just told everyone to work together to overcome the difficulties and lay off as few people as possible in the next few years. China's economy has been really difficult this year. There seems to be a dark cloud above everyone's head. Everyone feels very depressed. Domestic production has reached its peak, foreign trade cannot go out, and various voices from overseas are rampant, and even more talk of collapse. Everlasting. Jiafeng's development has also encountered bottlenecks. Domestic consumption power has peaked and overseas markets cannot be opened. Some people in the management still have illusions about the annual target of 2 billion. Lu Feng knows that this is the best year in the next few years. It was not until that person came forward that he began to aggressively issue national bonds and start the development of the Western region, and then a new economic cycle began. Overseas newspapers reprinted Lu Feng's equity transfer, and the evaluation was naturally not very good. Lu Feng didn't take it seriously after reading it. He was not waiting for anything now, just waiting for John to dare to gamble. In the blink of an eye, it was August 1. Feng Xiao couldn't wait any longer and called Lu Feng. During this period, Feng Zhishan was frantically smearing him in the major media, describing him as a villain who killed his father to make money. He was helpless. Put up with it? Then don't wait. Since they don't respond, I will go there myself. Tomorrow I will announce to the media that I am going to Xiangjiang. I will go there the day after tomorrow, Lu Feng said solemnly. The two discussed for a while, then hung up the phone. Zhang Xiaoyan sighed and said, "Do you have to go now? You have reached where you are today, and you should know one thing, that is, you need to know how to advance and retreat. I can hide, but Jiafeng can't. I won't let all my years of hard work be taken away. The most important thing is that there is only one private semiconductor company in the country." Lu Feng lit a cigarette and sighed. He took a breath and said, "You can't be bullied like this." Seeing that he refused to give in, Zhang Xiaoyan said, "As the old saying goes, he who knows the current affairs is a hero." What is current affairs? Are strong ships and cannons current affairs, or are bandit tactics called current affairs? Lu Feng suddenly became very excited, stood up and said, "I have worked hard for so many years, and the communication chips have finally caught up. Now they give me a sum of money, dismissed me." "What are you yelling about?" Zhang Xiaoyan saw that he was agitated and didn't want to say anything. She stood up and walked upstairs. She walked up the stairs and turned around and said, "What if you let someone be detained in a small dark room and killed? Your life is at stake." Lu Feng sat there silently, so this situation was not impossible. Early the next morning, Lu Feng contacted the newspaper and bought a few headlines to publish that he was going to Xiangjiang on August 3, mainly to visit his investor Mr. Feng. Also on this day, Lu Feng's private plane brought over a dozen people from Thailand to serve as security for his trip tomorrow. Lu Feng is coming, and he is coming with great fanfare. This was a naked provocation to the UK. On the same day, the British media published a report classifying Lu Feng as a criminal. As long as he entered Hong Kong, he would be arrested immediately. On the morning of August 3, an official article was published. It was about Lu Feng. The wording was not strong. It only stated that Lu Feng, as a citizen of China, should produce strong enough evidence if he was arrested in Xinjiang, rather than making something out of nothing. This can be regarded as an official vaccination against Lu Feng's appearance. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Lu Feng and a group of 20 people boarded the cruise ship and headed to Xinjiang. During half an hour on the ship, Lu Feng made a phone call to John, and the content was very simple. "I don't know what will happen at the end of the year, but if something happens to me this time, then I guarantee you that there will be nothing at the end of the year," Lu Feng said solemnly into the phone. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1192. Latest website. The call was hung up, and John sat at home and stared at the dark night outside without saying a word. If they had taken the initiative before and wanted to arrest Lu Feng to avoid further trouble, then now Lu Feng's counterattack was coming. To be restrained or not to be restrained is a problem for John, and this is not something he can decide. John went downstairs, picked up the landline in the living room and hurriedly called the senior management to communicate the matter. Lu Feng would arrive in Xinjiang in half an hour. I dare not say that the whole world, at least the senior people in both countries and places, were watching this. It's something. Especially if something went wrong during the countdown to the first anniversary of the return, it would be a big deal. If Lu Feng was detained quietly, it would be fine. But if he comes with great fanfare, the police in Xinjiang may not dare to arrest him. After a call was made, the CEO of Schroeder Group said that they were in communication. People from the court called by the senior management were analyzing Lu Feng's case. Moreover, the mainland issued a document to support this matter, which also made them uncomfortable. Many people believed that Lu Feng was not subject to, is the second sunset for Britain. The first time was when Iron Lady fell. The atmosphere in a conference room at number 10 Downing Street was extremely tense. Two groups of people were arguing endlessly. One group of people believed that what Lu Feng did was difficult to convict under the current law. All his products were delivered, and at most they were designed to be false. Publicity issues, but such issues are not criminal offenses. As for the bankruptcy of the GFN branch, many people have asked for refunds. This is also a business issue. Lu Feng has financialized home appliances, and locals have done more of this kind of thing. Another group of people believes that Lu Feng is suspected of illegal fundraising and using false propaganda to conduct chain fundraising, which involves financial crimes and must be arrested. The two sides were arguing fiercely, and no one could convince the other. 10 minutes later, the senior management held a brief meeting. The meeting did not discuss any results. They just called Patton to inform him not to act rashly and wait for notification. At 10 o'clock in the morning, as the ship docked, Lu Feng walked off surrounded by a group of bodyguards. He was greeted by a large number of reporters, all of whom pointed their guns and cannons at Lu Feng. "Mr. Lu, can you talk about the purpose of your visit this time? Are you here to represent the people, or do you have other identities and other tasks?" At such a time point, such a high-profile trip, including yesterday's reports from the mainland, does it mean that the mainland and the UK are still competing? Reporters completely blocked the road, and they rushed towards him with questions. Even though there were bodyguards opening the way, a microphone was still pointed directly at Lu Feng's face, as if he couldn't leave today without saying something. Lu Feng looked around but did not see the police. He stopped with a smile on his face and said, "Let me say it first. I will simply say a few words and you guys get out of the way, okay? I also support your work and hope that you will please understand me more." With the approval of the reporters present, Lu Feng paused to collect his thoughts and continued, Mr. Feng is a noble person in my career. He not only invested in me, but also helped me a lot, so this time I came mainly to visit him. I am very disappointed with what happened to the Feng family. The last time I came to Xiangjiang, I was in a hurry because I had something to do at home, so I went back. I only represent Jiafeng Group, and I cannot represent others. As for some countries labeling me a criminal, I don't agree with it. I will definitely appeal. I hope that the Feng family's matter can be resolved smoothly this time. As for Mr. Feng's chills. After Lu Feng finished speaking, the reporter started asking questions again. Lu Feng waved his hand and refused. Everyone at the scene got out of the way. The car outside had stopped at the intersection. Lu Feng got into the car under the escort of bodyguards. In the car, Lu Feng felt a lot calmer. At least now he could be sure that the higher UPS were already considering this matter, otherwise Lu Feng would be arrested as soon as he got off the boat. Lu Feng didn't know the big game behind this matter, and he didn't want to know. He could only fiddle with the abacus in front of him and settle his own accounts. He couldn't get involved in other games that belonged to this era. The car went directly to the villa. Su Yurong and Feng Xiao were already waiting. After getting out of the car, their hearts dropped when they saw Lu Feng as soon as they walked in. It seems that the most dangerous time has passed. Su Yurong sat down and asked Lu Feng, what are you going to do next? It's still the original plan, let the court decide. If the court doesn't decide, then withdraw the lawsuit and directly declare the will to be effective. If Feng's Heshan continues to occupy it, then spend some money and find some people to make trouble. Lu Feng said to Feng Xiao, as long as the people behind Feng's Heshan don't help him, even if they don't express their stance, he will have no place to stand. What if he comes up with an agreement? Feng Xiao asked. Then follow the supplementary terms in the agreement. No matter what happens, you can get back your property. Lu Feng continued, but there is one thing, and that is to be quick. In the past few days, many parties have please pay attention and finalize this matter. As things have developed to this point, the only thing they are competing for is time. As I said before, if no one pays attention to someone else and they are robbing you, you won't be able to do anything. But now, they want to lose face and refuse to admit anything that is ironclad. Is there any law in Hong Kong? If the local area is so chaotic, then the country can speak out and demand that the people of Xiangjiang be given the most basic property security rights. Lu Feng's set of methods is no longer a commercial level method, but a higher level than business. The most important thing now is to ensure the popularity of the news and quickly solve the problem. Now contact many newspapers and TV stations for interviews. Remember, not only do you want to talk about Feng's Heshan's evil intentions to rob family property, but also about your unfair treatment in the court. But you still place your hope in the court and believe that the law still exists. Land, and at the same time urge the court to open a hearing again. Lu Feng ordered Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao nodded to express his understanding. Lu Feng turned back to look at Su Yurong and said, I would like to trouble Mr. Su to contact a few media outlets that are not too concerned about the fuss and make some sarcastic remarks. Don't they like freedom of speech? Then be free. You'd better hold her tighter. If you let go, I'll have to restrain you even though I'm gritting my teeth, Su Yurong reminded. No, they don't dare. They were doomed to lose from the moment I got off the boat. Lu Feng thought for a while and said, arrange for me to go to the hospital in the afternoon, just to visit Mr. Feng and Mr. Feng's funeral. It needs to be held as soon as possible. The attention is so high that we can't hide it. The two of them agreed to Lu Feng's proposal. After having a simple meal together at noon, they started working on their own. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Lu Feng went to the hospital and stayed for more than an hour before coming out. The outside was already surrounded by reporters. Lu Feng was immediately surrounded when he walked out of the hospital. Did you see Mr. Feng? Did he say anything to you? Mr. Feng's second son, Mr. Feng's Heishan, told the media earlier that he speculated that Mr. Feng had passed away. What do you think? The police held a press conference at noon today and stated that they will enforce the law impartially in your case. Do you have anything to say about the pyramid scheme case in London? Lu Feng didn't respond to the reporter's questions. He just stood there with a solemn expression. After a long time, he finally said, Mr. Feng's condition is very bad. I don't even have a chance to talk to him. I can't tell the truth when I see him. This situation makes me really sad. As for Feng's Heishan, he is a complete liar. I also believe the police in Xiangjiang. I have not committed a crime. Everything is false accusations because it involves more than just business issues. Those who are clean will self-clean. As an upright businessman like me, I believe everyone has the same idea in their heart. Steelyard, I also believe in the judicial system of Xiangjiang, but I still hope that the trial can be held as soon as possible. It has been delayed for too long. I hope this is due to the delay caused by the relatively large number of cases recently and not due to manipulation by some people with ulterior motives. Lu Feng changed the topic and began to talk mainly about Feng Xiao's matter, so as to gain more exposure in public opinion. At the same time, he separated the matter from civil affairs such as grievances between wealthy families and escalated the matter. Only in this way would ordinary people not care about it. Only the top management will pay more attention to it. Both TV and newspapers are bombarding with news. Feng's Heishan went to the company for a few hours in the morning and then came back. Even if some people in the company didn't say anything openly, they still looked at him with strange eyes. Weird. What are these people doing? What they agreed to do, but they haven't done anything yet, leaving Lu Feng to dance around like a clown. Feng's Heishan threw the lunch newspaper in his hand directly into the trash can. He is very excited now, and it will be very detrimental to him if this continues. The most important thing is that he can no longer feel the power behind him. Feng's Heishan stood up and wandered around the room. Although it was inappropriate to call Patton to urge him, it was better than calling John directly. Patton's secretary picked up the phone and informed Feng's Heishan that the other party was in a meeting. An hour later, Feng's Heishan made several more calls before picking up the phone. Mr. Feng, what's the matter? The tone on the other end of the phone was quite distant. Feng's Heishan was stunned when he heard this tone, and said, what can happen to me? You also know that we are a place ruled by law. Now that Lu Feng is arrogantly walking through the city, what is he like? What's more, he escaped from prison. I'd better arrest him as soon as possible. The person on the other end of the phone coughed twice and said, you don't need to worry about these things. I'm not thinking about you. The things I told you about foreign company equity are just trivial. There are several companies going public recently, and the stocks will definitely be easy to sell. When the time comes, I will lend you some money and buy some for you. Feng's Heishan said steadily. Heishan, we are all our own, and we don't want to embarrass you. Let's put it this way. You have been avoiding the limelight recently. As long as the limelight is over, everything will be easy to talk about. Don't attract the attention of both parties, otherwise something will happen. Son, it's not something little people like you and me, Lu Feng, can handle. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1193. Latest website. The limelight has passed. If the limelight passes, I'm afraid I'll feel cold. I want to know who means this. This is not just my matter, there are many people involved behind it. I still hope you can support me, otherwise I can only call Mr. John. Feng's Heishan said with a bit of anger. Road. Call whoever you want. Patton hung up the phone directly. Feng's Heishan put down the phone and took a deep breath, looking particularly unhappy. The situation had reversed too quickly, and he had to find a way to save himself. The only bargaining chip a businessman can have is money, but now money doesn't mean much to this matter. Feng Zhishan can't afford anything else. After much thought, he decided to call John, hoping there would be a chance of survival. After the call was connected, Feng Zhishan said straight to the point, "Mr. John, I am in a very difficult situation now. In any case, after this matter is completed, it will be the greatest benefit to Schroeder's group. You will be the beneficiary party, and at the end of the year it would be easier to control GFN Group. Mr. Feng, I understand everything you said, but the situation is complicated now. If it is just a business issue, I will definitely support it. Unfortunately, even I have no control over this matter now," John said into the phone. "Although I can't do anything, you can." "Mr. Peng doesn't support me," Feng Zhishan said, dissatisfied. "Those who do big things must learn to get through difficulties on their own. Now that the eyes of both parties are focused on Lu Feng, as long as you get through this period, it will be fine, right?" John pondered for a while and suggested, "You'd better ask the media to turn their attention and make some other noise." "Any other news?" Feng Zhishan was thoughtful. There was nothing John could do on the phone but give him some advice. He needed to walk this journey by himself. After hanging up the phone, Feng Zhishan sat on the sofa and smoked one cigarette after another. Now he needed the media to turn their attention elsewhere, but he didn't know what kind of thing could set off the media. He picked up the phone and called a manager who usually had a lot of clever ideas. Half an hour later, the manager arrived at his home. Feng Zhishan briefly explained the matter, and the other person began to think deeply. From the perspective of the media, Lu Feng is obviously directing public opinion towards politics, and it is the most sensitive area. This kind of thing is very difficult. Now in the media in Hong Kong, let alone dog bites man, man bites dog. It's nothing new. The other party sat there and said nothing. "Why don't you get some tidbits for him? Find a few women to seduce and take some photos," Feng Zhishan suggested. "This is not news. No one cares about a rich man playing with several women. With the current media trend, let alone Lu Feng playing with women, he just plays with men." It is not explosive news. After the manager said this, he suddenly had an idea. Suddenly, he slapped his thigh and said, "Yes." "What?" Feng Zhishan asked hurriedly. It was revealed that Lu Feng was having an affair with Feng Xiao. "He wanted to be your younger brother and sister." "This matter has been brought back to the aspect of family ethics," the manager said excitedly. With a subtle smile on his lips, Feng Zhishan nodded and said, "Interesting. Let's do it like this. Then I'll find a few paparazzi and try to take some photos. The sooner the better. You can't prove your innocence in this kind of thing." By the time he has finished talking to the media, this matter will basically be over. Feng Zhishan suddenly felt very good. Such a thing broke out, absolutely can cover up all the things happening now. In the evening, major media outlets followed Lu Feng's reports one after another and linked this matter with his return a year later. The entire society in Hong Kong is paying unprecedented attention to this matter. Whether Feng Xiao can get fair treatment will become I got a test paper from the current Xianjiang Judicial Department. There are many people in Xianjiang who look down on the mainland now. However, if this matter is not handled well, it will greatly damage their confidence. They will not even be able to obtain legal notarization at the very least. What is freedom, and how can they have the face to accuse them? The mainland is not free. In the villa, all the news channels on TV were talking about this matter, and experts were invited to discuss it. Public opinion began to tilt towards Feng Xiao. He didn't go out to eat at night, so Lu Feng ordered takeout. The three of them had a simple bite. After the meal, Feng Xiao seemed quite emotional and said, "This matter will finally come to an end. It's such a big fuss now. I believe the court will be held tomorrow. It will be reviewed. If we don't receive the court notice tomorrow, we will announce your father's death and follow the will directly." Lu Feng said to Feng Xiao, Now is the time to hold the funeral for your father and to drive Feng Zhishan away. No one dared to intervene at that time, and public opinion was at its most turbulent. But you have to remember one thing. When you face reporters and media, you must cry harder. Lu Feng planned to resolve this matter within a week and cut the knot quickly. Feng Xiao also thought it was okay, but Su Yurong had different opinions. I think you two should be more careful. I know Feng Zhishan a little bit, and he is not a good person. After Su Yurong finished speaking, he glanced at the time and said, I have to go back and make preparations. There is a dinner party to attend tonight. The two of them got up to see Su Yurong off and walked out of the villa. Some of the bodyguards around the villa returned to the hotel not far away, while the rest were watching at the door and the monitoring room. On a high ground a few hundred meters away from the villa, 4 or 5 young people were squatting at some point, holding telephoto lenses in their hands and aiming at the villa. Come out, prepare to shoot, find a good angle, you know. If we can't find any substantial contact, we'll borrow our spot to shoot. As Lu Feng and the others walked out, the sound of cameras clicking was heard continuously, and a paparazzi on the edge whispered, you can't take pictures of anything from this position. Move over there and take a picture of 2 people looking at each other, or making it look like they are touching each other. Take a few more photos of the 2 of us walking back together. Lu Feng sent Su Yurong away. He looked at the starry sky and let out a long sigh of relief. He had never expected that the fight would reach this point. He looked at Feng Xiao beside him, reached out and patted his shoulder and said, early. Rest, everything has been arranged for tomorrow, there is a press conference at noon, you have to go. Brother Feng, you should also go to bed early. Lu Feng nodded and walked towards his car. He sat in the back seat and lowered the window. As soon as the car drove out of the villa, he saw several people squatting high above, holding long guns and short cannons. He suddenly felt bad and started to scold him. Said, what are you doing? The paparazzi were startled and ran away with a loud shout. They immediately dispersed in all directions. Lu Feng and the driver got out of the car and rushed forward. He turned around and shouted to the driver, stop chasing me. Go back and call for help. A few minutes later, bodyguards number 7 and 8 rushed out, looking for people all over the world, but only caught one unlucky guy who ran too slow and failed to catch up with the car. Lu Feng immediately called the police, and then took him back to the villa. He looked through the contents of his camera for a long time, and all the photos he took were photos of Lu Feng and Feng Xiao. Why are you taking these pictures? Lu Feng asked. The other person squatted there and said nothing. Don't say anything, right? Now I have 2 choices. The first is to hand you over to the police, and the second is to hand you over to people who are idle in society. Lu Feng walked up to him, knelt down, and fished from his pocket. I paid out several thousand Hong Kong dollars, stuffed it into his jacket pocket, patted his shoulder and said, I think you know how to choose. The other party's expression was still stubborn. He stared at Lu Feng for a while and said disdainfully, what I despise most are rich people. If you two are gay, everyone will know about it tomorrow. Being gay, Feng Xiao wondered, what is being gay? That's 2 chairs. What are 2 chairs? Feng Xiao still didn't understand. Do you know about chairs? There are 2 identical chairs stacked on top of each other. Just go and stack the 2 chairs on top of each other and you will know. Lu Feng turned back to look at the paparazzi and said, get out. I didn't say anything, the other party stood up and said still forcefully. I know, let's go. After the paparazzi left, Lu Feng sat on the sofa and thought about it, and burst into laughter. If this matter was reported, he would really be unable to defend himself. I can't sleep well tonight. Lu Feng glanced at Feng Xiao and said, you can rest, I'll go outside to relax, and help me find the police's phone number. More than an hour later, Lu Feng's car stopped in front of a high-end club called Qiao Nianhua. After getting out of the car, Lu Feng walked in to find the foreman and said, "Make arrangements for me, the most beautiful one of you. Please go to the second floor." "You are on the second floor too," Lu Feng was surprised and followed him. After going upstairs, the other party arranged for a living room. The decoration was very good, and all kinds of tea were available. It was obvious that the price here was definitely high. "Hello Mr. Lu, what kind do you want?" "We have people from various countries and personalities," the foreman introduced. "European and American." "Hurry up, I'm in a hurry," Lu Feng urged. It was already past 10 o'clock in the evening, and Lu Feng was afraid of being delayed for a while because the police were off duty. After a while, the door opened, and a dozen tall, fair-skinned beauties walked in, all with graceful figures and alluring looks. Lu Feng glanced at them, pointed at 3 of them and said, You 3 stay here, arrange a better room with a bigger bed." A few minutes later, Lu Feng was escorted downstairs by 3 beauties. As soon as the door was closed, the bodyguard had already dialed the police number outside to report Lu Feng for doing business here, and he immediately got rid of it. Lu Feng faced the 3 beauties in front of him and suggested, "Let's play slowly, don't be in a hurry, and take a bubble bath first." An hour later, the police still hadn't arrived. Lu Feng began to feel that time was passing too slowly. After another 10 minutes, they still didn't come. Lu Feng had to make an excuse and go to the bathroom to make a phone call. "Mr. Lu, just hold on a little longer. The police will be here soon. Just hold on." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1194. Latest website. The police arrived late and were blocked by club staff. The bodyguards led the police to open the door of Lu Feng's room. A few minutes later, Lu Feng was taken away wearing only a nightgown. Several people were standing guard at the door. The reporter slapped Lu Feng. Several paparazzi went back to hand over the photos. Because they were afraid that they would be caught, Feng's Heshan refused to pay them. The few people never mentioned the matter. After picking out a few photos, the few people took the money and left immediately. Feng's Heshan looked at several photos in front of him. One of them was taken from an angle that looked like Lu Feng was looking at Feng Xiao affectionately. The 2 seemed to be holding hands, and the other one was holding their arms around their shoulders and looked like their faces close to the face. Feng's Heshan smiled with a hint of evil humor. He wanted to see what Lu Feng would do tomorrow. The photo was sent to many newspapers, and the writer began to look at the photo overnight and use his imagination to write a story of several thousand words about the drama of a domineering president falling in love with a rich man. It is daytime on Wall Street at this moment. Tiger Fund and Quantum Fund have begun to build positions in Thai baht and are quietly acquiring shares in the market. This time, it is not just the 2 companies, but most of Wall Street is involved, wanting to buy in Thai baht. Confining a country's exchange rate cannot be accomplished by 1 or 2 funds. Soros originally thought he could make a big profit from tungsten or futures, but he ended up with a small loss, which made him very unhappy. In addition, he heard in the past few days that GFN Group was selling tungsten mines in South Africa. He also called a number of mining companies, hoping that they would not acquire it and that in a few years, the price could be reduced by half. But several mining companies couldn't afford to wait. They originally planned to let local wealthy families act as white gloves to take over the mining industry, but this time it proved that white gloves can sometimes cause trouble, so it was better to take control in their own hands. Many companies have contacted GFN's branch in South Africa, but it is difficult to get results within half a year. In the end, the processing rights of these minerals still belong to Wall Street. At the same time, senior officials in the United States also called Maha to express dissatisfaction with helping Lu Feng transport the lithography machine. Maha denied it on the phone and asked them to provide evidence, otherwise it would be slander. Of course the United States has no evidence, but this does not affect their actions at all. Maha is still thinking in his heart, as long as he is not caught, the other party can't do anything. He can't fight over this matter, right? Xiangjiang, late at night, Lu Feng was released from the police station on bail. Su Yurong looked at him in his nightgown with a gloomy expression. He walked out of the police station and got into the car and asked, "Where are your clothes?" "It's in the bag, go back and change it." Lu Feng leaned on his seat and felt a little tired, and said, "Let's drive back, I'm tired." "Look for 3 of them." "If you're not tired, who is?" Su Yurong said in a strange tone. "What's your tone?" "I'm not thinking about the overall situation." "I told you that people taking pictures of me will cause trouble," Lu Feng said helplessly. "So you're only looking for 3, Su Yurong stared at him and asked. Lu Feng clicked his tongue and looked for a cigarette in his pocket. He didn't find it. He picked up her lady's cigarette and lit one. He looked out the car window and said, "You are boring, very boring. To prove that you're not a gay, why don't you come to me?" Su Yurong stretched out his hand and pulled Lu Feng and said, "You're going to wrong me, right?" "What?" "Our relationship has to be exposed. It won't be good for you." "What's wrong?" "I'm single and you're single too. What do I have to fear from you? Or are you getting married again?" Su Yurong said angrily, "I like playing so much, so I'll go back and play 100 times later." Lu Feng opened the car door, took down his clothes bag and left. "What are you doing?" "Find a hotel to sleep in. It's safe to stay with the bodyguards." Lu Feng got into the car behind him without looking back, and then several cars went straight to the hotel. Su Yurong could feel that the 2 of them had reached a critical stage. Whether they were lovers or lovers, they all said they had the 7-year itch. In fact, if 2 people have been together for more than a year, the novelty has been lost. When 2 people test each other to see if they like themselves, it's like opening a blind box, with hope in their hearts, and at the same time, they secretly hope for good things to come. When you open the blind box and get what you want, from being ecstatic at first to not leaving it day and night, to finally exploring all the subtleties in the blind box, everything returns to a boring feeling. For ordinary people, life is just day after day, not to bravely pursue higher goals, but to try not to let the condition of survival get close to them. Su Yurong was also a little tired of Lu Feng, but she couldn't find a more suitable one. Before she was 30, she felt that she didn't care about marriage, but after she turned 30, she knew why the word human was a word. It was made up of a combination of 2 people, because 2 people need someone to rely on. With her wealth and status, there are only 3 choices: creating a first generation, a rich second generation, and a pretty boy. She knows that many people support the pretty boy, but the final result is just a transaction. When the material world is satisfied, the spiritual world becomes a priceless treasure. What's more, Lu Feng can help her a lot, and the 2 of them have known each other for so many years. Su Yurong's mood was a little complicated. She sighed with a depressed expression, lit a cigarette, and drove back. Early the next morning, almost all the headlines in Zhejiangjiang's major newspapers were occupied by Lu Feng. At a glance, 80% of the newspapers were filled with photos of Lu Feng, making him the biggest celebrity in the area. The TV media also took turns to bombard it, and even called in various experts to discuss and ridicule. "We want to know. I heard that the club Mr. Lu went to is very expensive. Logically speaking, such a place should be very safe. How could it be investigated?" the host teased. "I think there may be too much noise. Think about it, there are 3 foreign women. But in comparison, what do I think about the love between Mr. Lu and Feng Xiao?" the female host said with a gossipy face. "Mr. Lu really has 2 flowers." The host on the TV was chatting with a smile. Feng Zhishan in front of the TV couldn't laugh it off. He really couldn't understand why Lu Feng was going out to play at this time. And he got caught? Feng Zhishan immediately understood after a moment's thought that the paparazzi last night had definitely been caught. Lu Feng had just made this move. Although it had changed the direction of public opinion, there was not so much information to dig out, and gossip reporters would not pursue it. Dig deep. Hold. Feng Zhishan cursed angrily and kicked the coffee table, looking furious. Lu Feng arrived at the villa at 10 o'clock in the morning. Feng Xiao was already waiting. Lu Feng walked in and said to him, "There will be a press conference in half an hour. If you don't hear from the court in a while, just cancel it and announce your father again seriously ill." "Okay, thank you for your hard work, brother Feng. It's just a little punishment. After all, we have known each other for such a long time, so it's nothing to endure this little hardship for you." Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder and said, "Go change clothes." Within 10 minutes, the two got in the car and went straight to the press conference. They did not receive any news from the court until the opening ceremony. Facing a team of dozens of reporters, Feng Xiao scolded Feng Zhishan, then talked about Mr. Feng's condition, took out a copy of his will and showed it to reporters, and finally ended with the rule of law in Hong Kong, hoping that the law will protect one's property, and at the same time, it is hoped that the law can punish unfilial children. Whether there are laws in Hong Kong now has once again aroused public discussion. Patton's phone calls were almost flooded, but he refused to answer them. He only sent a few minions to deal with them. They said not to believe one side of the story and would give him a few words. Give fair answers and so on. In the afternoon, Feng Xiao announced the withdrawal of the lawsuit and stated that Mr. Feng's condition was even worse and he had entered the rescue stage. Feng Zhishan called one after another, and every message made him extremely painful. He called Patton and answered his call at first, but later he couldn't get through at all. Feng Zhishan had no choice but to call John. It was already midnight in London, and John was unbearably annoyed by him. After picking up the phone, Feng Zhishan explained the situation again, hoping to get help, and said that as long as he took control of Sun Hung Kai, he would be able to control Sun Hung Kai in the next 5 years. The annual meeting will provide John with a performance of no less than 1 billion. 1 billion? It's useless to give me 10 billion now. The decision-making power is not in our hands. When is it now? Go to the mainland and have a look. There is a countdown in the square over there. People just want to pass the law. Solve it, believe it or not, if this side speaks out or intervenes, there will be movement over there immediately. Then what? A crisis? Or a war? Besides, this is obviously all planned, one link after another. Your father's condition is so cooperative that he immediately becomes seriously ill as soon as the lawsuit is withdrawn. The time is too tight, there is no room for maneuver, the relationship is too rigid, and the nodes are too sensitive. This is a blitzkrieg. Don't you understand? John scolded Feng Zhishan on the phone, and then warned him not to call him again and disturb him from sleeping. Listening to the busy signal on the phone, Feng Zhishan threw the phone on the ground casually. He was unwilling to give in, but no one cared about him now. It was like a check. When he first met, he was happy. When he found that the check could not be cashed, he used it to wipe it. My butt is too hard. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Feng Xiao contacted many media and officially announced that Mr. Feng, the founder of Sun Hung Kai, had passed away due to illness, marking the death of a generation of financial tycoons. This news is definitely explosive news for the media. From the time when the Feng family's feud was revealed to now, everything happened too fast, giving people an unreal feeling. That night, Feng Xiao led people back to the old house, broke all the door locks, hired a large number of security personnel to handle the door, and began to decorate the morning hall overnight. Even if Feng Zhishan wants to prevent Feng Xiao from returning to his old house, now that Mr. Feng has passed away, he has no reason to stop him. Many people have stayed up all night. The sky has turned white and is surrounded by white silk. But despite the crying, Feng Xiao is just silent. Sitting in the yard, holding a cigarette in his hand. It was so quiet, the dead silence before dawn. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1195. Latest website. As the first ray of golden light tore through the white fish, the entire earth was illuminated golden, and newspapers from all major media reported the news of Mr. Feng's death. Feng Zhishan got the news not from his family, but from the media. Feng Xiao had informed all his relatives about the news last night, except Feng Zhishan. Feng Zhishan was not happy that Feng Xiao returned to his old home. This represented Feng Xiao's counterattack, but he was unable to stop it at this moment. If he dares to say even half a word, he will fall into huge moral condemnation. Feng Zhishan sat on the sofa and looked at the newspaper in his hand, his face turned gray. He felt that he didn't have much power to fight back. The whole of Xiangjiang would be focused on his father's funeral, and then Feng Xiao would announce his will take over the company. In full view of the public, without the backer behind him, Feng Zhishan was like a manipulated puppet, walking step by step towards the ending Feng Xiao wanted. This feeling was so suffocating that Feng Zhishan felt a little breathless. He closed his eyes and leaned on the sofa without saying a word. Since the morning, various relatives of the Feng family have come one after another. Feng Zhishan has also officially returned from overseas. Media reporters are swarming at the door. Feng Xiao saw too many people, so he went out and gave a brief explanation. Now it is still in the morgue stage, and the funeral will be held in 2 days. Have issues regarding legacy been resolved? Will Mr. Feng Zhishan show up? Will your eldest brother adjust the relationship between you two brothers when he comes back? I heard that you had a fight with Feng Zhishan. Is it true? Okay, Feng Xiao said to the crowd with a dark expression, let's not talk about this anymore. I hope that all journalists can respect the deceased and be merciful. The issue of inheritance will not be raised at this time. The funeral affairs will be dealt with first. That's it, let's disperse. Although Feng Xiao told everyone to disperse, there were still reporters squatting outside. There were already people coming to the house in batches, including various aunts and wives, both familiar and unknown. Feng Xiao didn't understand the funeral process. Fortunately, there was a relevant MC company presiding over it. Lu Feng simply burned some paper and was ready to leave. Yes, I didn't get a good rest last night, so I have to go back to sleep. Before leaving, Lu Feng went to Feng Xiao and asked him about the will. Feng Xiao lowered his head and said, why don't we wait until my father is buried before mentioning this matter? Many relatives just told me about this matter. I still hope that the two brothers can be more harmonious. Once my dad leaves, there won't be many close relatives left in the world. When Lu Feng saw him like this, he knew in his heart that these relatives were doing bad things. He didn't need to ask to know that it was because of the way his family and everything would be prosperous. Although the land of China was vast and had a huge population, those bad relatives in the family came from the south. Baidu has a virtue. When brothers are fighting against each other, these people advise the bullied party not to be angry, while the stronger party suppresses it. Both parties sit together and have a meal, understanding it as if nothing happened, but when the etiquette of the scene is over, the stronger party one side still does whatever they want. You don't need to worry about this matter. Go rest first and have a good sleep. If anyone wants to talk to you about this matter, just say you are not in the mood. Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder and said, now that the matter has come to an end, you are only one step away from success, but don't waste all your efforts. Think about what these relatives are doing when you are serving the dishes. There was a hint of determination in Feng Xiao's tired eyes and he nodded. There were many people at the scene, and the cries were accompanied by the smell of burning paper money, giving people an indescribable sense of desolation. Lu Feng walked out of the morning hall. Too many people came, some were placed in the living room, and some were placed in the living room. In the courtyard, small groups gathered together, chatting for a while and then left. For close relatives, this occasion is painful, but for marginalized people, it is a social place. If they have not seen each other for a long time, or want to see someone but have no chance, this occasion is definitely a good opportunity. Lu Feng walked around the yard twice, listening to these people chatting. Most of them were Mr. Feng's business friends. If they didn't leave, they were waiting for Li Shouji. The two middle-aged men in their 40s in the corner were collateral cousins. Lu Feng stood not far from them and listened for a while as they discussed their relationship. One of the round-headed men was the son of Feng Xiao's mother's cousin. According to the traditional five clothes theory, he was no longer a relative, but he still came. "Hello," Lu Feng stepped forward and said politely, "Are you a relative from Xiao's side?" Yes, hello, Mr. Lu, right? I always see you on the news." The other party shook Lu Feng's hand enthusiastically and said politely, "My name is Zhu Baizai. It's great to have relatives. So many people are involved in this incident." Lu Feng sighed. "It still requires more people, so as the old saying goes, new people are more prosperous." Zhu Baizai echoed. Others also sighed. Lu Feng dispersed a wave of smoke for several people. They were also surprised. They did not expect that the aloof Mr. Lu could be so down to earth. "What did Feng Xiao call you?" Lu Feng asked Zhu Baizai. "I am younger, so we can be considered nephews and grandnephews, but Mr. Feng and I are very close. We are both very good relatives. We even helped my grandfather's family in the past." Zhu Baizai said about the previous interactions between the two families. "I thought this man was Feng Xiao's uncle. You are Feng Xiao's mother-in-law. Xiao is having a hard time this year." Lu Feng smoked a cigarette and looked at the two of them. "You can't fight alone, you still have to have someone to help you, otherwise they will act like wolves and tigers, bully you to death." The two nodded repeatedly, agreeing with Lu Feng's statement, but then they said that they really didn't have the ability. One of them was an office worker and the other ran a restaurant, so they didn't have the ability to take care of this matter. "I want to take care of it, but I can't. It depends on my status. As an outsider, I interfere too much and let people say it," Lu Feng said to the two of them. Both of them have been in society for half their lives, and they immediately understood what Lu Feng meant. It was just that they lacked a mentor to become famous. Although Zhu Baizai said that they were distantly related, how did the media know who you were related to? All you have to do is stand up and say you are one of your own. Isn't that how Liu Bei got up back then? "It's too hot." Lu Feng raised his head and glanced at the sun and said, "How about we change places to chat?" Okay. Zhu Baizai looked happy and hurriedly followed Lu Feng. The buddy who was standing with him was also pushed back. After leaving Feng's house, the cars on the roadside were already full and wreaths surrounded the entire house. After Lu Feng got in the car, Zhu Baizai also got in the car. "Mr. Lu, if you have anything to say, just say it." "I'm stupid and I'm afraid I won't understand what you mean." Zhu Baizai seemed a bit reserved. He smiled flatteringly at Lu Feng, but he felt too inferior. Trying hard to suppress this expression, he looked extremely reserved. "Relax." Lu Feng handed him a cigarette and said, "It's a simple matter. Mr. Feng's will has not been finalized yet. Did you see the pile of reporters not far away? It's what everyone is paying attention to right now. But Feng Xiao can't mention this matter, otherwise he will be an unfilial son and use his father's death to force the second brother into the palace." Yes, what you said makes sense. He is not suitable to do this now. Zhu Baizai thought quickly and said, you are not suitable to do this either. You lack an identity and can easily be attacked by those relatives. Look, you are not stupid at all. I hope that when Feng Zhishan comes, you, as a relative, will raise this matter in front of reporters, so that it can overshadow the funeral itself. What happens after it is done? I will give you 50,000 Hong Kong dollars first, and there will be a farewell party in 2 days. You take out the will, read it out in front of reporters, and tell Feng Zhishan to get out of the company. Lu Feng lowered the car window a little, knocked the cigarette ashes outside, and continued, after the will is completed, 50,000 US. Remember, what I want is an explosive effect. If it doesn't achieve my goal, requirement, your income will be halved. Zhu Baizai was so excited that he couldn't control himself. He knew that sweeping out some garbage from the Feng family would be enough for him to live for half his life. This trip was really not in vain. Zhu Baizai nodded and quickly said that he would do a good job. Lu Feng started to look for money in his pocket, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find any cash. Finally, he found that 10,000 Hong Kong dollars had been thrown into the glove box at some point. He handed it to Zhu Baizai and said, deposit, remember this. It's your fault as a member of your family. It has nothing to do with you at all, and it has nothing to do with Xiao, I understand. Zhu Baizai took the money and said with a smile on his face. Lu Feng patted his shoulder with satisfaction and said, get off the car. I guess Feng Zhishan will be here soon. Zhu Baizai got out of the car as soon as he put the money in his pocket. He didn't go in, so he stood at the gate and walked back and forth. He waited until 9:30 in the morning. 3 Mercedes-Benz cars stopped at the gate. The reporter also recognized that they were Feng Zhishan's cars. All gathered around. A few security personnel got out of the 2 cars behind and blocked the reporters out. Then the door of the first car opened. Feng Zhishan got out of the car with a serious look on his sunglasses and walked inside under the escort of several people. Before he could enter the door, Zhu Baizai stood in front of him and said loudly, Zhishan, I have something to tell you. Seeing this, the security personnel hurriedly pushed him back. The 2 of them started pushing each other instantly. Zhu Baizai shouted, why are you pushing me? Do you know who I am? I am Feng Xiao's nephew. What can I say for my family, already? The commotion over there instantly attracted the attention of reporters. Several people could not stop them at all and rushed in to take pictures. Zhu Baizai kept scolding, are you bullying no one in our family? Do you really think my family is easy to bully? Your mother didn't dare to do anything back then, and you're making trouble with me here. The scene was a combustible mess, and Feng Zhishan was surrounded by reporters. Lu Feng sat in the car and looked at the chaos not far away. He silently raised the window and told the driver, go back. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1196. Latest website. It was almost noon when he returned to the hotel. Lu Feng didn't eat, so he went back to wash up briefly and then went to sleep. The scene at the Feng family's old house had turned into a mess. Under the spotlight of various media, the scene was a bit out of control. Some relatives had feelings towards Feng Zhishan. The scene seemed to be divided into 2 groups, blaming each other and even taking action at one point. It wasn't until noon that Feng Zhishan entered the door. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't leave in this situation, otherwise the reputation of being an unworthy descendant would really be confirmed. Feng Zhishan entered and saw the solemn Bai Ling stepping forward. There was a huge black and white photo of Mr. Feng placed on top of the mourning hall. The coffin had not yet been nailed. There was a brazier in front of the coffin, and all kinds of exquisite items were placed on both sides. There are paper pricks, and on the left and right sides of the inside are the most famous monks in Xiangjiang, chanting sutras for salvation. Feng Xiao also ordered a group of Taoist priests from Singapore to come on the day of the farewell party. Relatives were standing outside the door, gathering in groups and talking. Feng Zhishan walked forward, knelt down on his knees, and began to burn paper and chant sutras. Feng Xiao knelt aside, wearing a white cloth and saying nothing. After burning the paper money, both of them kowtowed. Feng Xiao stood up and said, "Go back, I haven't prepared any food for you." "That bullshit, nephew, was it arranged by you?" Feng Zhishan stared at Feng Xiao intently and asked. "I said no, and you don't believe it? Now everything I say is in vain. Until now, I still believe that people should be conscientious in life and take what they deserve." Feng Xiao said nothing more and turned around and walked away. He hasn't slept a wink since last night. After receiving relatives and friends in the morning, he had nothing to do in the afternoon. He simply had a meal and went to rest. The media in Xiangjiang bombarded this matter with reports. Whether it was TV news or newspapers, it can be said that the streets were empty. There has been a lot of abuse from the outside world against Feng Zhishan. With the fermentation of public opinion, Sun Hongkai's stock price has been falling continuously. Some people think that Sun Hongkai will go downhill in this tug of war among the wealthy. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening when Lu Feng woke up. He had a simple meal and read the newspapers all day long. Everything was under control. On this trip, Lu Feng brought something special from home. He opened the suitcase and took out a tightly wrapped scroll. When he opened it, there was an ink painting inside. A courtyard with lush apricot trees. Full of fruits, several adults were sitting in front of the house to enjoy the cool air. Not far away, there is a child holding a dog in his hand. The picture is very pleasant and freehand, but the rope holding the dog in the child's hand is drawn too thick, as if it has been soaked in ink. Lu Feng stared at the painting blankly, recalling that when he came to seek investment, he had gone through many and many efforts to get the investment. This painting was given to him by Mr. Feng. After watching for a long time, Lu Feng sighed inwardly at Mr. Feng's vision. He had already known what kind of character Feng Xiao was, and probably had guessed everything that happened today. Without Lu Feng, Feng Xiao would really be sleeping on the streets. Lu Feng raised his head and saw that it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. He stood up and picked up his cell phone to call Feng Xiao. "I didn't have a good rest last night. I was too tired. I just woke up and remembered that I hadn't burned paper for your dad yet. I'll go there now." Lu Feng asked towards the phone. "You didn't have any conflict with Feng Zhishan today, right?" "No, I also took a rest in the afternoon. I just woke up. Now it's a foregone conclusion. He has lost the support behind him and will not be able to achieve much success. When Li Shaoqi came today, I even had a few words with him." Feng Xiao thought about it. Looking at the scene at that time, he said, "He supports the victorious people." When Lu Feng heard this, he was afraid that he would pull Feng Xiao up, and then he would fall to Li Shaoqi. He sighed and said, "Xiao, you can't listen to what others say. People need to work together. You and I have known each other well over the past few years. Don't let others buy you off with just a few words. Remember to discuss anything with me. Brother Feng, you will always be my brother Feng," Feng Xiao promised. "Then I'll leave now, see you later." Lu Feng asked before hanging up the phone, "Did you get your father's will?" "It was taken away by Feng Zhishan, but there is a copy with the lawyer." "That's good, see you later." Lu Feng went downstairs and got into the car under the escort of bodyguards and went straight to the Feng family's old house. It was already past 10 o'clock in the evening when he arrived. Lu Feng walked towards it. The scene had long lost the bustle of the day and seemed extremely quiet. Feng Xiao came out and looked much better. Lu Feng glanced at him. The two of them walked towards the morning hall in silence. When they got there, they knelt down to burn paper. Feng Xiao knelt beside him and whispered, "The will, the copy has been brought over." There was such a big fuss after you left today that Feng Zhishan had nothing to do, but he told me that he would not leave Sun Hongkai even if he died. It's not up to him to leave or not. If being a rogue works, then why should I start a business? I can just go to those big companies and hang around. Lu Feng looked at the flames coming out of the brazier and said, the day after tomorrow there will be a farewell meeting, give the copy to Zhu Baizai. Feng Zhishan immediately understood what Zhu Baizai and Lu Feng had arranged. He nodded aside, and after burning the paper, Feng Xiao said, Kowtow. There's something else. Your dad got me a painting, so let him be. Lu Feng took out the prepared painting, opened it, took a look at it, and threw it into the brazier. The flame slowly turned the scene in the painting into a. After removing the ashes, Lu Feng raised his head and stared at the fine coffin in front of him, secretly thinking, I'll give it back to you. After burning the paper, Lu Feng and Feng Xiao went to the living room. Lu Feng sat down, lit a cigarette, and said to Feng Xiao, some things must be prepared in advance and cannot be discussed later. Since the will be made public the day after tomorrow, then we must make plans early. What are your plans? Feng Xiao asked. The management still needs to win over, otherwise you won't be able to start work when you go back. You also said that Li Shouji supports the winner. This is one less obstacle. The only ones left are some veterans, such as Jenkin. You will. If you speak in the boardroom, someone will listen to you. Come out for a meal and have a chat. Lu Feng said to him, anyone who supports you is supportive. As long as you can give them enough sweetness, it's not a big deal for them to defect. Feng Xiao heard that Jenkin's expression was a little subtle. It was obvious that he had a grudge against this person who had been his elder since he was a child. Lu Feng noticed his discomfort and said, life in this world is just a stage. Where can everything go as you want and everyone pleases you? There are roughly 3 types of people in this world. Those who can be used can be created. You are an insignificant person. If you meet tomorrow, please don't show it. Feng Xiao nodded and said with a hint of sadness, I didn't expect that. My father taught me to be sincere for half my life. In the end, it was useless. This world is made up of hypocrisy and lies. Lu Feng saw him sighing and couldn't help but said, don't say that, this is called high emotional intelligence. Is that scheduled for evening or noon? Let's go to noon. Just say thank you to these veterans for spending so many years with your father, Lu Feng said to him. Feng Xiao nodded and agreed, saying that he would find someone to make the invitation soon. As for the place to eat, don't choose a place that is too prosperous. Just find a remote mountain villa. If you go to a prosperous place and be photographed by reporters, it will be easy to make a fuss. It was already 11:30 p.m. when he left the Feng family's old house. Lu Feng got in the car and felt that this matter was not a big problem. The supporters behind Feng Zhishan were gone. If there were no supporters in the company, it would be a complete failure. The commander-in-chief. Regardless of whether he is willing to leave the company, if 2 people randomly drag him out of the company and throw him on the street, the security guards probably won't give him a second glance. That's how people are. When they gain momentum, they are defended by everyone, and obviously everyone is paying attention to them. Once they lose momentum, they are nothing. As long as nothing goes wrong, I believe the matter will be completely resolved on the day Mr. Feng is buried, and it's time for Lu Feng to plan his own affairs. It is basically a foregone conclusion that he will leave at the end of the year, and Lu Feng actually does not want to stay in his heart. After 1997, there will be large-scale layoffs in the country, and the economic crisis will come one after another. The large number of employees under the company will be a very headache. Now that you have decided to leave, you have to plan a way out. There is an office space in Xiangjiang, but if you want to take root here, you still need to know people, especially those in finance. We're not going back to the hotel, we're going to Mr. Su's house, Lu Feng ordered the driver. It was now the end of August, and as September entered, Lu Feng was thinking about letting Liuqin join Hurricane as the vice president, and then transfer the others. When people move to Huiwang to work, they have to have business in Xiangjiang. In this regard, they still have to rely on Su Yurong. Lu Feng actually doesn't want to rely too much on Su Yurong, but Feng Xiao doesn't have much influence here. If the Feng family could help him, Lu Feng would definitely kick Su Yurong away and let her leave from Huaninge immediately. All he had to do was divest the equity of Huaninge or register another company by himself. The problem is, if Lu Feng dares to do this now, Su Yurong will definitely not help at all later. The situation between the two of them is that everyone knows it well and cooperates with each other. I'm afraid it's a disaster. Lu Feng sighed. The car had stopped at the door of Su Yurong's villa. The house was dark. Her servants would clean up at home during the day and go home at night. Just as Lu Feng was about to ask the driver to turn around, a car parked nearby. The female driver got out and two female assistants opened the door and helped Su Yurong out. Lu Feng got out of the car and saw that her cheeks were slightly red from drinking, and couldn't help but ask, "Why did you drink so much?" "I participated in a wife's bureau, and those cousins said that I didn't have a man, and male Gobi couldn't kill them after drinking. 6 of them vomited after drinking." Su Yurong walked forward with a smile on his face, and used his hands to putting his hand on Lu Feng's shoulder. He said, "You said those ladies are just pets raised by others. They all look down on this and that." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1197. Latest website. "You two, why are you fooling around with them?" Lu Feng helped her walk inside. After entering the house, Lu Feng found hangover medicine and handed it to her. After more than half an hour, her condition improved a lot. Su Yurong changed her clothes, sat on the sofa with a glass of sugar water, looked at Lu Feng and said, "Why do you remember me? I have some free time now. It's time to come and see you." Lu Feng looked at Su Yurong under the light. He had indeed lost a lot of youth in the past few years. Compared with when they first met, he looked a little greener. Completely disappeared. Now is the time to mature. "Why are you staring at me?" "I don't have any flowers on my face," Su Yurong said angrily. "It's beautiful, just like a painting," Lu Feng praised. Su Yurong clicked her tongue and said in disgust, come on, just tell me if you have anything to do. I'm not a little girl. Look at you, I'm not even happy to praise you." "I have nothing to ask of you," Lu Feng said and leaned towards her, put his arm around her shoulders and placed her in a comfortable position, close to her ear. He said, "I just suddenly felt that you were very charming and pure. I had no other thoughts." "Are those 3 ocean horses charming? If you don't lift the pot, I think you want to punish me." Lu Feng exerted force on his hand, causing Su Yurong to exclaim. The two of them immediately got into a fuss, but they went upstairs fighting for a while. An hour later, the two of them were lying on the bed with reddish faces. Su Yurong was leaning on the bedside and lighting a cigarette, looking particularly comfortable. He took a long puff and put half of the cigarette in the ashtray, making a very loud sound. He said lazily, "Go to sleep, I'm tired." Lu Feng lay down and faced her, and asked, "If I move the company here, will you help me?" Su Yurong opened her eyes slightly, looked at Lu Feng opposite and said, "Is this why you work so hard?" "It has nothing to do with that, it's all one code." "That doesn't matter." Lu Feng put a sticker on her body and said, "The R/U0026D company will definitely face funding problems if it is separated from Jiafeng. After all, the R/U0026D company does not have the ability to make profits on its own and needs financial support. Don't worry, I will definitely help. United Capital will be the first to invest." Su Yurong smiled and said, "Can I still ignore you?" Lu Feng was stunned when he heard that United Capital wanted to invest, and then said, "You don't need to invest in person. The R/U0026D company is different from GFN Group and cannot guarantee profitability. Okay, I'm tired, let's not talk about this anymore. Su Yurong squinted her eyes and stopped talking. Lu Feng stopped talking and the two fell asleep hugging each other. The next day, the local media was still covering the Feng family's affairs overwhelmingly. The will had become a hot topic. Even more people interviewed Zhu Baizai than Feng Xiao. The outside world reported on Zhu Baizai's identity in different ways. Some say he is an uncle, some say he is a cousin. Until noon, Sun Hongkai's stock fell continuously due to the incident. As a last resort, Group Vice President Jenkin accepted a brief interview with the TV media, saying that everything in the company was normal and that the Feng family's affairs would not affect the operation of the company. Lu Feng didn't get up until after 1 o'clock at noon. After washing and eating, he received a call from Feng Xiao. More than a dozen senior executives accepted the invitation to the dinner. He had already booked a villa in the suburbs. Then I'll go directly to the villa in the evening. Just give me a call when you're ready, Lu Feng said and hung up the phone. Who is it? Feng Xiao. Su Yurong was in high spirits as he ate the meal, and said with a hint of charm, I feel like I can't even hold the knife and fork. So you have to be moderate. Lu Feng forked a piece of steak and said, I'm going to invite Sun Hongkai's executives to dinner tonight. Tomorrow is the farewell party, so you should go and show your face. I heard that Feng Zhishan has lost support. Who dares to support him? Isn't this an obvious attempt to cause trouble? Forget about small tricks. They have to consider the impact of such a big thing. In any case, there is less than a year left, and they don't want to cause trouble, Lu Feng said while eating. I didn't expect you to be able to see opportunities, Su Yurong praised. This is not about looking at opportunities, it's about assessing the situation. Lu Feng finished his meal and lit a cigarette and said, I hope you can seriously consider what I told you last night. I really need your help when I come to Xiangjiang. Don't worry, since the two companies are together, everything will be convenient. Su Yurong put down his knife and fork and said, before the official showdown at the end of the year, I will introduce you to a few bosses in Xiangjiang. Besides, Sun Hongkai can't invest in you. The two chatted about the financial world in Xiangjiang. Lu Feng estimated that he would sell 20% of his equity in exchange for the continuation of the R/U0026D company. The R/U0026D company could not survive relying solely on the chip industry. As for selling patent rights, I'm afraid it won't be easy to sell either. Financing must be planned carefully so as not to be stretched thin at some point. The two of them were chatting at home about business, then about the Feng family, and then about family. Unknowingly, it was getting dark. Feng Xiao called and told Lu Feng that it was time to leave. I'm leaving first. I'll take Feng Zhishan's route tonight. See you tomorrow. Lu Feng stood up and said. The bodyguard was already waiting outside the door. The car door opened, Lu Feng got in the car directly, and the three cars drove straight to the suburbs. At the same time, Jenkin and the others were already halfway there. Jenkin and another executive in his 50s were silent in the car. They had never expected that the situation would change so quickly. These executives all know Feng Zhishan's background. Whether it is Li Shaoqi or Patton, they are solid backers that ordinary companies do not have. However, after Lu Feng came and made such a fuss, these people were like paper tigers and gave up. Jenkin took a deep breath and looked at the darkness outside the car window, and said, Mr. Zhao, I'm afraid I'm going to get scolded soon. How do you say that? Mr. Zhao said, turning his head and looking at Uncle Kun, who had worked hard for Sun Hongkai for half his life. Feng Xiao was afraid that he would take a grudge against me. Although he was polite on the phone, I could feel his hidden anger. Jenkin sighed and said, the most difficult thing since ancient times is to choose sides. It seems that no matter which side you choose, there is a 50% chance of choosing both sides, but if you choose the wrong one, it will be a 100% failure. Mr. Zhao thought for a while and said, I don't think so. Even if Feng Xiao wants to do something, Lu Feng has to give in. You also said that today's situation is not caused by Feng Xiao, it is all planned by Lu Feng, he is just a puppet. You also told me what kind of person Lu Feng is. This kind of person will not do anything like killing the donkey as soon as he comes up. Mr. Zhao's words reassured Jenkin a lot. He was only a few years away from retirement, and he would not be more involved in the company's affairs in another 2 years. The car arrived at the villa and drove directly in. Unlike those lively gatherings, this villa seemed much cleaner. After getting out of the car, the foreman led us to a pavilion halfway up the mountain. We could look around at the scenery of the entire villa, and even you can see the bustling city in the distance. Several people greeted each other, each of them looked quite nervous, and there were not many smiles on their faces. Feng Xiao was sitting in the lounge opposite. He could see everything going on here. He was sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, smoking silently, looking at these people with gloomy expressions. If Feng Zhishan disappointed him, then these people made him feel chilled. Many of them had watched him grow up and regarded them as elders in Feng Xiao's heart. However, in his eyes, the kind elders did such a thing. Feng Xiao sometimes thought that he should open them all and let them disappear from his eyes, but he knew that he could not do that. 20 minutes later, Lu Feng arrived late. The protagonist of this dinner was Feng Xiao. In fact, everyone knew that Lu Feng was the one who had the final say. Lu Feng got out of the car and went to the lounge first to see Feng Xiao and asked, "Is everyone here? We should all be here, I haven't gone over yet." Lu Feng nodded and asked him to come together. Now the atmosphere among the dozen or so people had become lively. They were all old acquaintances and knew each other's personalities clearly. The appearance of Lu Feng and Feng Xiao made the scene suddenly quiet, and everyone turned their attention to the two of them. Lu Feng saw that everyone was a little reserved, and said with a smile, "It is really an honor to have everyone gathered together like this today. I didn't expect it, this is a gathering of friends, just relax and tell the waiter to serve the food." Before serving the dishes, Lu Feng was chatting about things in the company. He turned to Jenkin and said, "Uncle Kun, have you been busy lately? I just wanted to give you a call when I came to Xiangjiang. There are so many things going on, and those media know how to write about them, don't take some words to heart." "It's okay, I have a big heart," Jenkin said with a smile. "Let's serve a few cold dishes first. Everyone here is an elder. Let Mr. Feng pay homage to everyone first." Lu Feng looked at Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao picked up the wine glass and stood up. He looked at Jenkin and tried his best to hide the discomfort in his eyes. He held the wine glass and said, "Uncle Kun, you have been with my father for so many years and you have worked too hard for the company. Now that something happened at home, I know you are in trouble, but I understand, you watched me grow up, and you will always be my Uncle Kun in my heart, and I respect you." Jenkin was a little moved by these words. He quickly stood up and was pushed down by Lu Feng. Feng Xiao paid tribute to several other company employees and talked about things from his childhood. But the more he said this, the more he felt in his heart. The blood is dripping more and more. As the food was served, the stiff atmosphere on the table was completely broken. They started talking about Feng Xiao's childhood and then talked about Mr. Feng's entrepreneurship. Feng Xiao burst into tears on the spot. After 3 drinks and 5 dishes, Lu Feng took a deep breath, looked at everyone and said, "Today's meal is not free. I can also hear everyone's feelings for Sun Hongkai. I believe this is the hard work of Mr. Feng and everyone, is also the continuation of Mr. Feng's life, but what is Feng Zhishan doing now?" Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1198. Latest website. Mr. Feng is gone, but Sun Hongkai is still there. This is the continuation of his life. I believe this is also the continuation of everyone's life. It proves that he has struggled. For such a large company, the person at the helm must be chosen well, otherwise it will only be bring Sun Hongkai to its destruction. Lu Feng said earnestly to everyone, if such a day comes, I believe you don't want to see it. At your current position, you have a different view on money. Think about it, Sun Hongkai will still be standing 100 years later. When people want to understand the history of this company, you are all figures that cannot be avoided. I just said I've said it, Feng Zhishan's current approach won't work. He just wants to rely on the British. The question is, can the British be relied on? You are all natives of Xiangjiang. I believe you have the answer to this question. Self-reliance is the way out. As for what will happen in the future, I believe Xiao will definitely listen. Your opinions will help us manage the company well. That's all. The people here are older than me and have more experience than me. It would be pointless to say more. Lu Feng sat back and looked at Feng Xiao and said, Xiao, please say a few words. Feng Xiao looked at everyone present, hesitated for a while and said, you are all elders and have more experience in managing the company than me. I will definitely listen to everyone's opinions in the future. I also know that everyone has paid a lot now. The company's equity incentives are very important to me. It's not fair to everyone. This matter will be solved for everyone in the future. By issuing some additional stocks, everyone will be able to live their own lives after retirement in a few years. Feng Xiao's words were very simple, but he got the fate of these people. Because of the early investors, Sun Hongkai gave the management very little equity. These people present were not even billionaires. No matter how many beautiful words you say, it's better to give something real. Feng Xiao's words instantly moved everyone present, and everyone looked at him. Unexpectedly, Feng Xiao understood what they wanted better than Feng Zhishan. In fact, Feng Zhishan didn't know where it was, but for Feng Zhishan, the backer behind him was more important, and he promised all the money to outsiders. Jenkin was the first to speak, sighing with a sigh of relief, Xiao, don't blame Uncle Kun for what happened before. Your father has told you that Sun Hongkai must be in the hands of the Feng family. Since then, you should also know what the situation is like in the company after your father is hospitalized, and Uncle Kun has Uncle Kun's difficulties. These words made Feng Xiao burst into tears. His eyes turned red for a moment. He picked up the wine glass and choked with sobs, thank you for your hard work. I won't talk about it anymore. It's all in the wine. Everyone stood up, raised their glasses and drank it all in one gulp. This matter was considered settled. As a veteran in the business world, everyone is well aware of this kind of invitation. Accepting the invitation means agreeing to 90% of it, otherwise you simply don't come. As for the remaining 10%, Feng Xiao, I was impressed by the issuance of additional shares. After this incident, the atmosphere at the dinner table became a lot more lively. Everyone started talking about Mr. Feng's previous business venture together, soliciting investment from everywhere, trying their best to obtain licenses, and how to deal with the British. As he talked, Feng Xiao shed tears again on the spot. He ate and chatted. Unknowingly, it was already midnight. Everyone drank a lot, holding each other's backs and saying goodbye to each other. You should go to bed early. Lu Feng looked at Jenkin and said, by the way, there is something else to do tomorrow. Tomorrow is the farewell party. At the same time, Feng Zhishan occupies Xiao's position and plans to use some coercive measures. The company, the security guards and other things have all been ordered not to start a fight. Everyone said they understood, and everything must have been arranged properly, and no one would interfere at that time. The next day, the media at home and abroad were paying attention to Mr. Feng's farewell party. He got up at 6 a.m. and went to the Xiangjiang funeral home. The place was packed with people at 8 o'clock in the morning. Fortunately, the local police had made plans in advance. Hundreds of traffic police were responsible for traffic security issues. Hundreds of meters of camera corridors were set up on both sides of the road. This was not a funeral farewell party, but more like a funeral. On the red carpet, people who can be invited are definitely happy inside. Lu Feng woke up at 8:30 in the morning. After washing briefly, he changed into a black suit and sunglasses. Su Yorong also put on a black dress, and the headdress was a black gauze half covering her face. It looked like quite serious. "Come with me, and you won't be afraid of what reporters will guess." Su Yorong walked out of the door and turned to Lu Feng and said in a strange tone, "Don't let people guess the relationship between the two. I didn't expect you to be so petty. Just walk back and forth for a while," Lu Feng said and got into the car. The car drove straight to its destination. Lu Feng called Feng Xiao halfway. After the call was connected, Lu Feng asked, "Is everything arranged?" "Everything has been arranged. Zhu Baizai should be here soon." "Okay, I've also sent half of my bodyguards to the company. I believe there are already people in Feng Zhishan's office to help him pack his things." After Lu Feng finished speaking, he hung up the phone. "Is it stable?" Su Yorong asked. "With both his left and right arms gone, what can he fight with?" Lu Feng said as he leaned on his position and closed his eyes to rest. "Sometimes I have to admire your ability to peel off a person's social resources little by little. If it were someone else, they wouldn't put so much thought into it." Su Yorong admired. "We have to move forward, build bridges when encountering water and build roads when encountering mountains." The two of them didn't communicate too much, and Lu Feng felt a lot more relaxed. This matter had finally come to an end. At least Jia Feng would be safe until the end of the year, and he could keep the R/U0026D company safely. The car could only be parked in a parking lot not far away. The distance of nearly 300 meters required walking. Lu Feng got out of the car and walked inside with Su Yorong. Su Yorong seemed to get very close on purpose, walking dozens of meters away. A hand held Lu Feng's arm, looking particularly intimate. As soon as they reached the carpet, the camera was already taking pictures of the two of them. The reporter stretched out his arm and handed the microphone to Lu Feng, asking various questions. There was a lot of commotion in front, and there were many security personnel maintaining order. Lu Feng's way forward was blocked. "Mr. Lu, the Feng family's property has not been demarcated yet? Is there anything you want to say?" "I'm in a bad mood. I won't accept the interview." "What happened?" Lu Feng asked. "Feng Zhishan and Zhu Baizai got into a fight. Feng Zhishan even tore up the copy of Zhu Baizai's will and said that there were other agreements besides the will," a female reporter in front explained. Lu Feng secretly thought that the money was well spent. He worked so hard, but he didn't know that Zhu Baizai didn't care about the money now. The major media were flocking to Zhu Baizai, and all kinds of interview fees and attendance fees were paid by Lu Feng. Several times, Zhu Baizai now also understands that as long as he remains popular, major TV stations will rush to get him. "Who are you? Are you acting wild at my dad's farewell party?" Feng Zhishan's angry voice came from inside, and along with everyone's exclamations and rapid shutter sounds, there seemed to be pushing and beating, and it was like a chaos. "Enough!" A loud shout resounded throughout the scene. Feng Xiao stood at the door and looked at the chaos in front of him. He stepped forward and pulled Zhu Baizai away, followed by Feng Zhishan. Feng Zhishan stood 3 steps away, as if he did not want to get involved in these things. "Son, he has no backing and no power, so he can just take his own part and go. Don't be embarrassed anymore," Feng Xiao said to Zhu Baizai. "As an adult, don't be as knowledgeable as him. Go back and don't let my dad see this. Let him leave in peace. Are you pretending to be a dutiful son here? Didn't you arrange all this?" Why did you take out that will? Didn't you just want to tear up the previous agreement? Feng Zhishan was completely angry. He shouted to the reporters around him, Feng Zhishan, the family in my hands will always be the Feng family, but this one, the one in front of me, in order to seize the family property, worked as a dog for outsiders. How could you be where you are today without Lu Feng? The cameras at the scene were all focused on Lu Feng. Seeing this, Lu Feng hurriedly pushed aside the crowd and walked forward, passing Feng Zhishan all the way. Feng Zhishan pulled Lu Feng's arm and said, I advise you not to interfere in my family's affairs. If you push me into trouble, it will be easier for you. Seeing him in such a state in front of the media, Lu Feng just felt that this person would not take advantage of the media. Lu Feng slowly raised his hand and took off his sunglasses. At this moment, his eyes were red and tears were streaming down his face. I don't know why you are doing these things in such a day. But as your father's friend, I feel very heartbroken. Money is very important in life, but it is not that important. I am not in the mood to talk to you now. After all this, I want to see him one last time. Lu Feng choked, stretched out his hand to wipe away his tears and nose, put on his sunglasses and walked inside. The reporters at the scene kept taking pictures, and the way they looked at Feng Zhishan changed. He seemed to have become that ignorant, inhumane person regardless of the occasion. Lu Feng walked forward quickly and stood there looking at Mr. Feng lying peacefully. His hands were trembling, and his whole body seemed to have no strength. One hand was holding the coffin vigorously, and the other hand was trembling and covering his face. I burst into tears. Choking, there were constant snoring sounds in the nasal cavity, as if he was holding back huge emotions, which made people feel panicked. Feng Xiao's eyes turned red when he saw this. After a long time, Lu Feng burst into tears, slapped the coffin with his hands, and shouted, watching every bit of their past. Su Yorong was supporting him vigorously, as if she was so distraught that she hit her head on the edge and wanted to let him go. At this moment, even unrelated people standing here thought that Lu Feng was his biological son. The mood at the scene was ignited by Lu Feng, and everyone had solemn expressions on their faces. After everyone helped and persuaded him, Lu Feng stopped crying and said loudly and sadly, such a good person, I really don't know why God took him away. From now on, there is one less kind-hearted investor in the world, and there is one more kind old man in heaven. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1199. Latest website. Lu Feng's crying performance made everyone's eyes filled with tears. They were all focused on watching the scene where the brothers were fighting against each other. Who cared that this was a funeral, but Lu Feng's sad performance made people feel that he was the one talking to Mr. Feng. The person with the best relationship. Some order was finally restored at the scene, and etiquette procedures began to be followed. On the other side, at the Sun Hongkai Group headquarters, several people from the administration department opened Feng Zhishan's office and began to work. Others in the company saw a bunch of people cleaning up the CEO's office, and they all raised their heads and whispered. What are you doing? Are you changing offices? I don't know, go and ask. Someone with good connections quietly came forward and asked in a low voice, what are you doing? I'm telling you, don't go out and make noises, the other party whispered with a mysterious face. The vice president ordered us to come down and pack his things and tell him to get out. Which vice president? With a look from the other party, the man immediately realized that he had asked too many questions and hurriedly returned to his seat. In less than half an hour, everyone in the company knew that Feng Zhishan was leaving, and they knew that Feng Xiao was coming back without asking. This internal fighting in the Feng family is finally coming to an end. At 10:30 in the morning, as the farewell party ended, the family members expressed their thanks, and then the funeral was held. According to local customs, the burial could not be at noon, but must be staggered. With the cries, the ceremony officially ended, and Mr. Feng completely finished his life. Lu Feng did not participate in the burial. He and Su Yorong had dinner together in a hotel at noon. Su Yorong said while eating, "This matter has been settled. What are you going to do next? We can't say landing, we have to wait and see." "I'm afraid that he won't admit defeat and insists on doing something violent." Lu Feng lit a cigarette and said, "It would be best if he knows the current affairs, and nothing will happen next. Let's take a look at the company this afternoon. I basically agree with what you've said to me these days, but I have an idea. If you lack funds, you can spin off the R/U0026D company and then list it on the market. In this regard, I can help you." Su Yorong put forward his own idea. "I've suffered enough from capital." Lu Feng shook his head repeatedly. He knew the risks after listing. Capital from all sources came one after another. He was not short of money, but the company might not be his. This way he don't want to go through it again. What's more, according to Lu Feng's guess, the person most likely to eat him is Su Yorong. In this case, as a director of Hurricane Capital, I will control United Capital and let United Capital provide financial guarantees to Hurricane Capital and provide you with financing. However, in this case, I will have to expand my holding in Jufeng Capital, otherwise United Capital will not agree." Su Yorong said. "How much equity do you think you can agree to?" Lu Feng asked. Su Yorong was stunned when he heard this. He thought about it for a long time and said, "For 10% of the total assets, you can get 7% of the funds. This is like a mortgage, and there is interest. If you ask me, it's better. When it comes to financing, if you are afraid of being controlled, you can control the equity ratio and stipulate it in the contract. I have an idea." "Can I do shares?" Lu Feng asked. "What are shares?" Su Yorong asked dully. "In the board of directors resolution, my vote is worth 100 votes, and a small stake controls the equity." Su Yorong smiled and shook his head when he heard this, and said, "This is the first time I have heard this statement. No investor will agree. Even if your company can grow into a world-class giant in the future, I think I don't know how to invest. Isn't this just taking other people's money to start a business and not paying interest?" Lu Feng inquired for a while. It seemed that the share model was not feasible in this era. After thinking for a long time, Lu Feng said, "Then we will raise funds. You can help me find an appraisal company to increase the asset appraisal. Let's do it. I'll take care of things, don't worry." The two clinked their wine glasses and understood each other tacitly. Lu Feng knew that the chip company would probably not be able to make money in 2 or 3 years. If he wanted to support such a large R/U0026D company, the best way was to own a financial company and provide continuous blood transfusions. According to Lu Feng's guess, if an R/U0026D company becomes independent and wants to turn a profit, it will have to wait until at least around 2010, when the mobile phone industry exploded. As long as the R/U0026D company's research and development of chips, storage, screens, systems, etc., if it is at the forefront of the world, it will become an important enterprise. Su Yorong also has his own ideas. There are no pure financial companies in Xiangjiang now. They are either finance and real estate, finance and insurance, or high technology. United Capital transfers so much money every year, but all of it is transferred to other companies, which makes financial companies very unhappy. To put it bluntly, financial companies are just water pipes, but there is no reservoir. The water in the water pipe belongs to others. At most, it passes through you and you collect some interest, price difference, bridge tolls and the like. This is why large companies are engaged in finance, which is to install a special water pipe for their own industries, let funds invest crazily into their own industries, and use the money of investors and stockholders to do their own things. Su Yorong had another idea. She had indeed established a firm foothold in United Capital. The equity in her hand had made her one of the major shareholders, but she could not really control the company. She only had to take over Lu Feng's R/U0026D company. Then she holds the equity of Zhifeng Capital, and the two parties will have room for activity if they are combined. If something cannot be achieved at the United Capital board meeting, let Hurricane Capital discuss it and find a home venue for itself, not to mention that it can tie up a talent like Lu Feng. Lu Feng's search for financial companies was not limited to United Capital. Another alternative was Sun Hongkai. Unfortunately, there was a tiger like Li Shaoqi, so he chose United Capital to test the waters first. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Feng Zhishan returned to the company to pick up something after attending the funeral. As soon as he entered the office, he found that all his personal belongings were missing. He was a little in disbelief, and even walked out of the office door and looked at it again, and then yelled at the president's office next to him, "Where did the things in the office go?" "I'm not sure," a man standing at the door said, and walked away hastily. Feng Zhishan felt that the eyes from all around were converging on him. At this moment, he was like a tiger in peace, being stared at by everyone. No one spoke, and there was no enthusiasm as before, just watching and paying attention. "Where is the person in charge of the administrative department?" Feng Zhishan asked again. "I haven't come back yet. I went to attend the farewell party," a woman next to him whispered. "Where's the supervisor?" "I don't know where they are. Go get someone over here." The woman was a little embarrassed, struggled for a while, and walked downstairs, but she was not looking for the administrative supervisor. Feng Zhishan felt very uncomfortable being stared at by people in the office. He looked around and shouted loudly, "What are you doing with nothing? Are you all so free?" Everyone lowered their heads and went about their own business, and the suffocating air seemed to circulate instantly. A few minutes later, 6 or 7 men came up, all of them looking sturdy. The leading man spoke Mandarin and said, "Mr. Feng, your things have been sorted. I'll give you another place." "Who are you?" Feng Zhishan looked up and down and felt that the man in front of him was definitely not from the company. He had an evil aura about him and looked untouchable. "Don't worry about this, let's go." After the man said hello, the person behind him stepped forward and pushed and pulled Feng Zhishan downstairs. "Call the security. Let the security department come over," Feng Zhishan shouted, but no one in the company paid attention to him, and everyone tacitly acted as if they couldn't hear him. After a while, Feng Zhishan was taken downstairs and yelled at the security guard at the door. The other party also pretended to be deaf and dumb. He was taken to the parking lot, where a Jinbei car was parked with all his personal belongings. "Everything is here," a lot after the man finished speaking, Feng Zhishan was let go. They didn't listen to what Feng Zhishan said and turned around and left. Feng Zhishan felt something was wrong and hurried back. When he reached the company gate, he was stopped by the security guard. "You need an ID badge to enter and exit the group building," the security guard said to him. "Are you humming blind? Don't you know me? What did you do just now? Get out of the way." Feng Zhishan pushed the security guard away and walked inside. 6 or 7 people rushed out instantly and pushed him out. When he reached the door, Feng Zhishan had already raised his hands to hit people. The security guard had to call the police after taking control. In a parking lot not far away, Feng Xiao watched everything that happened in a Mercedes-Benz. He didn't know how many times he was pushed out by these security guards. These security guards who he once looked down upon were like an iron wall at that time. Generally. Now Feng Zhishan feels what he felt back then. Within half an hour, the police came. After a lot of questioning, no one in the company said there was such a person. There was no such person even in the company's management list. There was only Feng Xiao's name, not Feng Zhishan's. After struggling until the evening, Feng Zhishan knew that nothing could go back. It might have been a trap for him to go to work under Feng Xiao's name, but the other party had already made a foolproof plan. Even if he changed his name, it would not affect his current situation. At around 7 o'clock in the evening, Feng Zhishan stopped making trouble, knowing that it was a defeat and that he would gain nothing except losing face if he continued like this. Feng Xiao watched with his own eyes as he got into the car and drove away, and then he ordered the driver to go home. On the way, Feng Xiao received a call from Lu Feng, asking the legal team to finalize the will as soon as possible and divide the inheritance as soon as possible, so that the matter could be completely settled. Certainly. Hold on tight to avoid long nights and nightmares. Hire the best team of lawyers. I may go back in a few days, Lu Feng said to the phone and hung up. Is this room spacious enough? Where your office is, my office is downstairs, just one floor away, Su Yorong introduced. As soon as you enter the door, you will see the chairman's office. It's not suitable, right? By the way, can I retreat to the villa? Lu Feng asked. Latest website.